Welcome everyone to today's webinar. This is probably going to be one of many webinars that we will be hosting this year, actually on our own and with our different partners out there. Hopefully this is going to be a BAM year. And today's topic is about enhancing visibility of your MFT file transfers using Accolm BAM. This is probably the most common reason why anyone would consider BAM. And so to fire off this year, it was the obvious choice as a topic. I just want to highlight that we are recording, so if you cannot stay for the whole webinar, that's fine. If you have any questions, we have a QA at the end, but you can also reach out to us via email at sales@accolm.com, or recommended is that you reach out to the person who invited you to this session. Now, who am I? Right. So my name is Rickard Persson. I'm based in Sweden, Stockholm, and I'm a technical pre-sales specialist at Accolm. I've been doing this for a few years, but this is actually, I think we all agree that this was our first webinar in English. So it's an exciting time for us right now. And today's agenda is a very simple one. We're obviously going to talk a little bit about us, about the product, quite a lot actually, why anyone would choose to have BAM or acquire BAM, the benefits of using BAM, two very simple BAM use cases, a demo walkthrough of BAM, and then, as said at the end, a little bit of questions and answers. Oops. So we are an IT software and services company, and we've done this for, I guess, over 20 years. I think maybe even 21 or 22. And these are experiences within MFT. We provide solutions and expertise for Go Anywhere, EFT, Diplomat, and Move It. And we have offices in Sweden, the US, Argentina, and Ghana, giving us this sort of global reach for support errands. But our main office is in Stockholm, Sweden. About the product itself, BAM, it is a web-based tool that complements MFT products by providing visibility, analytics, and notifications, and is useful for both business and technical users. We also want to highlight that BAM is already used by hundreds of customers worldwide, and this ranges from banks to healthcare, states, teleoperators, you name it. It's kind of, well, I guess it's kind of common, but between enterprises that really needs this visibility. So why do these hundreds of customers use BAM? And why haven't we heard of it before? Because that is quite an interesting question. And the true reason is that we haven't really put that much marketing effort into BAM. It is something that our partners understand is usable for our different customers, and then naturally they help us with this. But now we've also realized that we want to do our sort of own marketing push, and that's why we're all here. But apart from that, in all seriousness, we saw the need for BAM during our early works with MFTs when we engaged with our different customers. And one of the things we noticed was that customers wanted better visibility. I've heard it myself a few times as well. I do a little bit of MFT work here and there. And the latest comment that I had was from our, I think it was a product owner, and he or she mentioned that this MFT, it's like a black box for business people. And I understand what she means. So BAM kind of helps unravel that mystery for the business people. And it does so by providing that self-service capability for everyone in the company. Now, if you have an important file transfer, you can use BAM to track that yourself, so you do not have to ask for administrative access to the MFT interface, or and this is something that happens quite often, that you have to find and fetch a busy administrator. So using BAM, it helps business people to be a lot less dependent on admins and support. Sorry. I also need to remember to breathe in between. So what are the benefits of using BAM? So it reduces cost associated with administration and support. provides self-service capability for everyone, options to set up alarms for, simple file transfers or files stuck in transit. It helps meet SLAs by drastically reducing response times, and it can do so by simply providing you with a simple heads-up alarm, actually. BAM has a very simple way of giving visibility of how the MFT server is being used with our different dashboard widgets and many ways of filtering your transactions. Business processes features, it helps give our customers visibility of their business processes that run on the MFT server. And finally, BAM helps admin and support staff in faster problem detection and resolution. And before we go into the demo, we have two use cases that I just want to bring up. One is a telecom operator in Sweden, and the other one is a retail company in the UK. So one of the largest telecom operators in Sweden needed a way for their business unit to get better visibility of their different processes. So using business unit section in the business unit dashboard in BAM, they are now able to easy and quickly track and trace their business processes and thus saving them valuable time and money. And a large retail company in the UK needed a way for their business users to search for transactions quickly using the self-service capabilities coupled with the extensive search filtering options in BAM. Their users are now able to find the statuses of their file transfers and business processes themselves. This eventually resulted in a drastic reduction in the number of support tickets that their MFT support team received on a daily basis. And it gave them time to allocate their resources differently to other, I guess it depends on who you are, but other important tasks. All right, enough of this. How do we actually do what I just mentioned? There's a few things I guess you need to keep in head for this. So let's all go over to the BAM dashboard and let me just hit refresh. All right. So this essentially is the organization dashboard that gives you a quick snapshot of today's transactions in all of your MFT environments. And that's very simple for me to say, but I think a few of you are going to ask the question, what is an MFT environment? So an MFT environment essentially is a database connection. That means that we could be having two different types of MFTs. As long as they're supported, we can aggregate them under the same view, which is pretty cool because you could use BAM if you're interested in migrating to a new MFT solution, for example. Again, as long as that specific MFT is supported. So we get an aggregated view, and I hate to use this phrase, but they're both aggregated into the single pane of glass, which is a very simple and I guess good way of saying it. Now we have all of these different interactable widgets. Now, I always I always like how my demo environment is set up, but okay, for this time I'll just move it and then I'll move it back and everything is back. So that's fine. And then if I wanted to, I could add more of these different widgets. As I mentioned, it's not interacting, it's not only just moving them around. We can see that we have 91 failures over here. So if I clicked that fail number, since we're covering multiple environments, we get them sort of neatly presented by rows. And I can see that I have 0 failures on one of them and 91 failures on the other one. Since this is emulated data, it's not really super exciting to see this, but we can see that we have a few failures in here. Now, the dashboard, although cool, it has its really good use cases. I know that one of the customers that I've worked with extensively, they asked me, oh, Richard, when is a good time for us to do an upgrade of our system? And so I could use this transaction trend to figure out, okay, at what time do we have the lowest amount of file transfers, for example? I also know that we have another customer. Now, this is data transferred by environment, but if I were to choose this single one node, it sort of adapts and changes, and it talks about top 5 participants. And in this particular case, our the customer was only interested into understanding how much data the different participants are transferring, because they build them by the amount of data transferred. So I mean, all of these widgets through all of these years, I think BAM is now 11 years old. We've like gathered all these awesome use cases and just kept adding widgets. So if you guys try it out and you feel like, oh, there's this widget that we want, we're always eager to listen in. But let's go back to the all. Now, I mentioned the phrase participant or terminology participant. We also have something called transactions, and we also have something called SLAs. I think SLAs, most of us know what it is. It is something that we do not want to fail, because these are specifically for, service level agreements for file transfers. We have something called transactions. This is a good one, and it's important to remember what it is. So transactions are essentially sequences of actions executed in your MFT environment. And that could be a user upload or an automation that kicks in to encrypt the file and upload a file. So by saying that last sort of segment, to explain it even further, a transaction is unit of work. What I mean by that is that a transaction might not only be a user upload. It could be something that is containing multiple actions, like the example that I gave you. Encrypting, we could be downloading a file, decrypting the file, I guess would make more sense. And then we send the file to whomever. So there's essentially 3, maybe even more actions within the same transaction. As I think most of us actually are technical people in the meeting, I think it makes sense to mention that this is based on job ID or transaction ID, and that is how it's sort of connected. So whenever an automation fires off, it creates an ID. That is the ID that we use here. Then we have something called participant. This is also a very cheesy line, but a participant is essentially someone or something participating in a transaction. And when I say someone or something, I guess a proper word would be to use entity, right? Because a system might not be a living thing. So it is an entity that interacts with your MFT to either send or receive files. Now we have 2 different types of participants, and the reason to why is that we want to separate who is what, actually. So if I just hover my mouse over here, we see over at the participants side of things that we have something called partners and something called applications. Now, a partner, simply put, is someone or something external to your company. Now, it could be a supplier, it could be a customer, I guess it could also be a partner. And then we have internal applications. So your HR, your payroll, your CRM. The last time I wrote an automation, I used Treasury. So that could also be a participant, right? Now, so participants and transactions, these are key phrases. And I think transactions, I would say, is the bread and butter of it all. And since they are such a crucial part of BAM, I'm going to head over to the transactions page and have a look at how we present these. Now, before I click all, which is sort of the raw, the unfiltered page, I'm simply highlighting that you can already on this level filter by inbound, outbound, jobs, if you want to define your business critical ones, the ones that takes forever to finish, the user accounts and so on. But again, I want that raw data. Sorry, I just need a little bit of sip of water. I guess while you guys soak in this beautiful view that we have. So firstly, we have tons of different columns. And I guess as a business user, this might be a little bit overwhelming. We could, if we wanted to, add more of them. I know maybe we are extremely interested in which protocol is being used. Maybe, again, that business value, which the sender, host is, receiver. I could also remove them. Obviously, I can change the refresh interval, but you would want the latest data when you're on this page. Specifically, though, I think date, sender, receiver, and status, obviously. We want to know if it's a success or something called a partial success, or failures. That could always happen. Let's hope that they don't. These, specifically talking about the sender and receivers, though, is that we just need to remember that we have to identify who or what is sending something to where. So a simple example would be that let's see, an internal application or a team wants to send a file to a partner, then obviously that internal application would then be the sender and the receiver would be the partner. So your finance team to a bank. But let's see here. And we also have a few different filtering options. We're looking at the latest hour. And if I could drill down years if I wanted to. I could do filtered searches with file name, with statuses, protocols, which jobs. I could do a transaction ID search, right? But just for this very simple demo, and because obviously I've prepared this, I'm just going to search for a wildcard with rename as a prefix. I hit apply. And the reason to why I'm using rename as an example is that we have that status called partial success. Now, I guess you could see partial failure as well. It depends on if you live life by half glass full or empty. But I guess we're a bit more optimistic over here. So what this means is that a few of the actions, right, a unit of work in the transactions, a few of the actions has succeeded, a few of them have failed. So where have we failed? If I click the date, so if I click the date, we can see over here, we can see over here that the job has actually failed, which we already knew, but we managed to upload the file to Sportswear in Sweden, and we tried to rename the file. So this is a very common example for me because we use suffixes. We use suffixes when we transfer files, and it could happen that when the file has been transferred to the destination, we want to obviously remove that suffix, and so that rename fails, and I want to get more information about why it failed, right? And this is where we're starting to get into, let's call it our realm now, because a lot of us in here are technical people, where we can get the source IP, the destination IP, if it's a task, what protocol we're using, and so on. And I think top of the cherry here, which is an extremely important feature, is that from this view as well, we can fetch the MFT's logs, right? And now it's really on repeating at the end of the day. It's really, we have failed because the file already exists, and we have that information over here already. But this is honestly a very useful section to have. Right, let's see, where am I? Okay. Sorry, I might have I should have mentioned that because a few of you joined. I'll just pause for just a second here and just explain. So we have, at the end of the session, we're going to have a QA. And really what we're looking at, I'm sort of leaving my own webinar right now, but what we're looking at is just a BAM slapped on an MFT, and it could be any MFT, right? So, but I'll answer your questions after the meeting. Oh, sorry, at the end of the meeting, not after. So, let's see. So, right, let's just reset this one. And let me get back. So, every transaction is associated to a participant. And as I cheesily said before, they're participating in these transactions. So we need to take a look at what these participants are. Now, if I could go to one of these all partners or all applications, and actually I just want to highlight, because this is a very sneaky feature, we have something called my participants, my partners, my applications, my business units, my yada yada. These are essentially a way for you, and I'll show you on this page. This is a way for your business people to sort of create their custom dashboards. Now, I'm not going to deep dive into that specific information, but we can separate the access control. But even if we separate access control, they can still create their own sort of like a mini dashboard within the limited information that they're allowed to see. So about these participants, I just want us to see and look, right? So if I know, if our support team, they got an email from, let's say from a partner bank who's telling us that, no, actually I'll use Clothing Chain UK. So they're telling us that the file is missing. Now, instead of me going in here, drilling into the all section to search or using one of these filtering options, because we've defined these participants, I can just go to the Clothing Chain UK, and we're not going to look at configuration side of things, but I'm simply highlighting that we define and we tell BAM what from our MFT is going to be Clothing Chain UK. And whenever that shows up in a transaction or an action, then BAM is going to understand that, okay, so this event rule, for example, or task is a part of Clothing Chain UK. And we don't really have to spend that much more time on participants. I think that is understanding that we separate them by partners and applications simply because we need to keep knowledge of what is internal and what is external, which is kind of going to help inbound and outbound, right? All right. So very briefly about participants, there was a little bit more information about transactions, and I hope everyone sort of understands how it works. Now, it is kind of rare though that you do these transactions in isolation. They're almost always a part of something that we call a business process. Now, business processes, they are these end-to-end transactions that you might have between your partners or your customers. Now, BAM will allow you to set these business processes up and aggregate them into one spot. So sort of in this singular box that will contain even more information. So let's go and take a look at how that is presented. So we have all of these business processes over here. Now we have these filtering options, but I kind of feel like it's unnecessary to show you the power of the filtering because I have 5 of these business processes. But if I go into the top one, and I'll try to explain it as well as I can, but I will do so by highlighting the 4 top rows here. Now, obviously, this is a demo environment. It just spins and spins and spins, right? But if we look at these top 4 rows, we can see that initially, someone from our internal finance department uploads a file. So we can see that it's a user account upload. That file is probably placed somewhere where we have a monitor. That monitor picks the file and sends it to private bank. Eventually, they reconcile the file and they send it back to us, or whatever they do, these banks. And then, so it's again a user account upload, by the way. And then we have another monitor that monitors that folder and pushes the file to its end destination. So we can see that it starts from finance and it ends at finance. So that for me is a complete business process. Now, the awesome part about these setups is that there's just so many things that could go wrong in this, right? Someone hasn't generated the report. That happens. I've had a few of those fights myself. That someone might not actually be the one uploading the file. So that's 2 people. We have an administrator at the very least, or a support team that will notice this as well. Sorry. We have a customer. That customer might reach out to another support team. So as you might have noticed, there's going to be a bunch of people that is going to be asking. There could be so many different questions in a very simple flow like this. But in the case of using BAM, we can figure out that, okay, the report was never sent. Was it even generated? Oh, we seem to have had some issues while trying to push the file to the the private bank. They never sent the file back to us. And well, hopefully we wouldn't be stuck on the last step, which is an internal transfer, because, well, that'd be sad. So setting these business processes up, and I mean, this is our way of recommending how to use these business processes, but you could be a little bit creative as well. I don't have any different example, but I know that I had a few demos in my career over here, and usually we're talking about these different layers of how BAM is set up, and you have the basic raw layer, and then you have the next layer would be these business processes, and then you have another layer in business units, and so on. So you could be creative for sure, but this is a way that we recommend that you use these business processes. Now, so these business processes, cool, but they don't really pop out of thin air, right? Someone has requested them to be set up in BAM, and those someone we call business units. So I think it's just natural to go over to the business unit section and take a look. So in my very humble business unit section, we have finance unit and we have logistics unit. And if I drill deeper, let's choose finance unit as an example, I literally only get information that is connected to this business unit, right? Sorry, I skipped a step, actually. I also need to explain to you how we define a business unit. So the idea behind these business units, they're supposed to mirror the organization, the structure of your organization is what I'm trying to say. So these could be your different departments, I think sectors, phrase that people use. And we, again, want to be able to create something for you to segregate that information. So at the end of the day, and this is a part of our extensive access control, is that the goal here is that whenever someone from our finance team logs on, they only see information related to finance team. Whenever someone from logistics logs on, they only see information associated to logistics. So I don't know if everyone was sort of following, but we can see logistics, pallets, deliveries, postal service. And on the other hand, we had private bank, we had credits, and so on. So it's these different terms. And just to show you, because right now we're logged in as an admin, I'll click the BAM dashboard, or sorry, the BAM button over here, and just quickly highlighting that we see an organization dashboard. We see a couple of something like 1,500 transactions. We can obviously see something called administration over here. If I log out and I write logistics user, and as you can see, I'm very lazy, so I don't really come up with new passwords. I do not see that organization dashboard. There's a whole lot less transactions. Actually, if I hover over here, I didn't actually show you guys, but if I hover over here in the last section, we would have seen an organization dashboard option, but we only see the information that logistics unit is supposed to see, right? We only see the logistics unit. If I go to business processes, let me just load this one up first. Now, if I go to business processes, I only see the business processes for logistics unit. So as you can see, we're able also, well, by the way, we don't have an admin section over here either. So as you can see, this is combined by using authentication groups in BAM with your AD or LDAP system. So when someone from your AD logs on and they're set to a specific group, that group connected to a business unit, they see what they're supposed to see. Because once you get BAM, the first view that you get is an overview of everything, like that organization dashboard. All right, let me get back into the admin menu. And let me just get a sip of water as well. Right. Let's see where we are. Okay, so we have covered let's see here. We're talking about participants, business processes, business units, transactions, obviously. And I think it would make sense to talk about SLAs because now we've started to figure out how things work. One, and I mean, so someone could be asking, so what's exactly an SLA? How do we define an SLA? And I'll give you an example of an SLA. It could be that we want DHL to deliver our products to our customers on the same day. Now, DHL says that they can only do it if they receive the delivery documentations within a time frame. This is a ridiculous example, by the way. And if they do not get that document in time, they simply cannot deliver on the expected within the expected date that we want. That means that this sort of chain of events is going to break. We don't want that, and we also understand that. And a failed SLA, I guess it depends, but it's not cheap to miss an SLA. I think we can all agree to that. So we need really good cover of our SLAs. So how do we do that in BAM? First and foremost, we have this very simple widget, past versus failures, right? I have my SLAs as well, by the way. So we have expected SLAs. These are the simple SLAs that I've set up for this demo. It's not much, but we want to look at the past versus failures. We have the last audit and the next audit. And if I drill deeper into one of them, we will see the different conditions over here, right? And the past versus failures, again, actually, because it's a very important statistics to follow. We can see the audits. Now we only audit it once a day, and it's only filtered by today. So that's why we don't have a cool list. But this is the way that we configure it, right? So it's checking for at least one file daily between a specific time with any name and the importance of a success in any direction. So it's extremely vague. Let me show you the configuration side of things. So the way, and I'm just for this, I'm not going to create one. I'm just simply showing you this configurations page. And I think this is the only bit where we actually show something of the configuration side of things. So obviously we need a name. And as you can see how creative I am with 1, 2, 3. We choose which participant the SLA is supposed to be sort of tracking, because we chose a participant, we didn't choose a business process. Now we're looking into tracking the file transfers from partner bank. So what direction are we expecting here? We're expecting them to send us the file. If we think about that business process that we had, I guess, ignore that. So we can, if we want to define file names, we can decide if we're expecting one file or more than one file or less than 10 files. We also have the option to count distinct files once, which is essentially if you receive a file multiple times a day using the same name, but it's really only important that the sort of constant flow works, then we can just choose to count it once. And then we want transaction status. I'm hoping that all of them are successes, and we are looking at a daily transaction frequency, and I'm expecting it by, I guess, 2 p.m. is a good time, right? I don't want to get notified at 4:30. So at 2 p.m., if this inbound, exactly one file. So if we haven't had an inbound any file to partner bank by 2 p.m., then the SLA is going to fail. The thing is that preferably what we want is that we want to define the actual SLA in here. That means that when that alarm at 2 p.m. fires, it's already too late, right? So, and this is such a cheeky little feature. So we have the option to enable SLA warning. And I know the latest SLA I set up, I think they wanted me to notify them at 11 a.m. So that's 3 hours ahead, giving them time to react before the SLA fails. And I think this itself is a really strong feature. Even the little warning down here. And then once we've configured these, the good part is that, I mean, if you're a technical or an admin like I am myself from time to time, I know that I don't really hold the power of these. Someone's going to come and ask me about these. That means that it kind of makes sense to have something called subscriptions. And let's go to the dashboard. I gotta say though, once you get BAM, I can imagine that a few of the business people, they're gonna think, so this is another system that I need to log on to. Yes, is your response to that. But the good thing is that they don't really have to log in here to check daily or weekly or hourly or whatever. They can track their important transfers by subscribing, right? So I know that I had a business owner. Oh, sorry, a process owner. So she was handling, let's say, IKEA as an example, and she kept asking me questions like, okay, so what happened to this task and what happened to that file and so on. And we simply got her to use file transfers subscription, subscribe to that IKEA participant, for example, or in this case would choose Clothing Chain UK, right? And then she can define what she's looking for and get email notifications. So she doesn't have to go into this system to look around for the file transfer. Obviously, if something's gone wrong, but even in that case, she will get an email notification that something has failed, rather getting an email notifications from the partner asking where's the file, right? So we can sort of hasten our different internal processes here, right? And even further, and I think this is very funny actually, even further, we can even help the business people. Like we can tell them, oh, you can go ahead and create your subscriptions to these different file transfer. We can also go to the admin subscriptions, right? So I myself, I'm a fairly lazy guy, to be honest, but someone, if I'm a business user, one of our admins, they could actually go in and they can create the subscription for me. That means that when I get a ServiceNow ticket, I set everything up. ServiceNow request. I set everything up. I do whatever needs to be done in my MFT. I do whatever needs to be done in BAM. And I sort of as a receipt, I just toss this subscription in as well. So that means that the process is running. If something happens, you will get an email notification. If you wanted to inform you when it's done and completed, we can do so as well. So, and I think this is generally what we try to achieve at Accolm, is that I always talk about quality of life when I talk about BAM, and so these features, we try to figure them out as we go. Let's see here. So we have covered subscriptions as well. And I think as a final thing, I think I wanted to aim for 45 minutes. So I think this is good. And then we can have a QA at the end. We have reports. Now, generally, when I'm talking about BAM and when people talk about the BAM dashboard, they're specifically talking about a reporting tool, right? So we obviously have reports as well, these pre-generated reports where your security team might want to check all the logins to your use different user accounts and so on to find if there's any malicious users trying to connect. So then they don't really need access to your MFT interface. We can track these different jobs and the last executions. We can check how often they connect to our environment, when they connected the last time. I had to do a cleanup not long ago where I needed to check all of the different connections and who's using and who's not using their user accounts. And then transactions by months. And then at the bottom, we have something called unprocessed files. Now, What unprocessed files is, and I would just actually, I lied before. I went into configurations one more time. I just want to show this page. So this essentially is scanning a network share, and it's checking with a threshold of 1 minute. You could change this, obviously, but it's checking with a 1 minute threshold. That means if a file is older than 1 minute in this folder, notify me that there are files stuck in transit. And this is a very common case for us, at least, where we download a file, we unzip the file, and then we want to send it to the partner. But the partner has something, there might be some sort of authentication issue, whatever. It could be a connection issue. But we're monitoring that source folder, right? And the file is now in our transit folder, so it's not going anywhere, right? So that is a directory that we want to track. And this could obviously, if I just click add directory, I just want to show you as well that it includes subdirectories. So it's, you don't, if you have 5,000 user accounts that you need to track, obviously you don't have to create 5,000 unprocessed files scans. You aim for the main folder. And then eventually you would have a report, and we get this nice list of all of the unprocessed files that we currently have. Right. Let me think. Yes, I think I've covered what I want to cover for now. Let me grab my very orange, oh, sorry, that is share, and that's not what I want to do. I want to build spiel. Now, before we start the QA, I would like to just briefly summarize, and I'll just be a little bit lazy here. So BAM is a tool that helps maximize investment in your MFT. Hopefully that is something that I have proven to you in some sort of manner. It provides visibility to non-admin staff. Obviously, it also creates it for technical staff as well. Helps reduce cost by providing self-service capabilities. I think I've tried to prove it at least. Helps admin and support staff in faster problem detection and resolution. Yes, sir. And then reduce workload on admin and support staff. Right. So I wanted to say, so before we start the QA, I want to highlight that if BAM is a tool that you're interested in, please know that the POC is free of charge. That essentially means that you can get a feel of how it is to configure the tool, but also that, I think, pretty nice view of your data as well. So reach out to the person who invited you if you want to try the product or if you want to know more information. We are also available by email, shared in the final screen. Now, I will do my best to give you a response. I have a bunch of people that is going to assist me if I don't know, but if I'm unable to give you a straight answer, I will gather all of your questions and I will share these by email to everyone who has participated in the meeting, but also I will make sure that you can fetch the recording of the session. Hopefully I'll edit out the first 15 minutes where I'm just doing something else before the meeting started. So let me see here, because I know that some of you have sent me questions directly and some of you has asked questions in the chat. And I know that, yes, so I was expecting that question because it's a very common question. One of the most common questions that we do get is how does BAM copy this information from the MFT? And that is usually the key word that they are sort of misusing is copying the information. BAM doesn't copy any information, it reads the database. So for example, I'll give you the database for your EFT, for example, that is called the ARM database. So BAM is going to read and send read queries and fetch that information and present it in a neat way. Let's see here. So I see, do you integrate with Go Anywhere MFT schema. Yes. So actually, if I wanted to be really cheeky, eventually I'm going to say thanks for joining. But the current, if I go back actually to the transactions page and I click the date, let's see, just showing you, and I want to pick that partial success. So the log information that we get here is actually from a Go Anywhere. So we see job number, project, these sort of, well, actually we see Go Anywhere here as well. So, so I'm assuming when you're asking, oh, you're asking, I think you're, if I'm understanding your question correctly, you're asking, will dashboard can be accessed in Go Anywhere application? So you wouldn't be able to go sort of the other way around. Like BAM is reading the Go Anywhere application, but it's not going to be the opposite. Oh, Roberto, let me read here. You touch on many words and relationships in BAM: SLAs, transactions, business process, user, jobs, etc. Have you guys put together a high-level relationship picture that describes this? You know, Roberto, you always ask me these tricky questions. I understand. Yes, because so from my point of view, since we're working with so many different MFTs, right? It is very tricky for us to decide the exact words. I remember before I joined, I think, and my team will have to correct me if I'm wrong, but we used to say business solutions, and then we decided to do business processes. We've had these discussions about sender and receiver. Now, if we're looking at this, because, and I want to highlight to everyone as well, because this environment specifically is connected to a Go Anywhere environment, we do have, as we can sort of sneakily see GAW over here, we do have an EFT environment. We do have environments for the different MFTs that we support. However, it's going to pick up, because it's a Go Anywhere environment, it's going to pick up the job as a name. It's going, I guess user account is actually the name that we've decided for. But for Go Anywhere users out there, we would be referring to this as web users, right? But I hear what you're saying, Roberto. I think this is something that I can sort of glance at my team, and I think it's a reasonable question. Could we set up a high-level picture? Yes. Sorry, I'm just reading. I hope you, and let's see here. Sorry, I'm just trying to catch up. Right, and I hope I sort of responded to your question, Roberto. Scrolling up, I see from Ashok, any roadmap to rerun or replay a transaction or a flow in error. Oh, this is tricky. I cannot really. I understand the question. So basically, what you're asking, Ashok, here is, if I see a failure, would there be any sort of way for me down the road, because it's not obviously not possible right now, to re-execute a job at the moment? No. Is it on our roadmap? I cannot really say. I would have to check with our team to see, because yes, exactly, and because you wrote it in parentheses as well, using MFT APIs. I honestly, just being clear here, we have, if we go to MFT environments, we have REST APIs, but we haven't really, this is a very new feature. And right now, the power of this, I do not really know. I know the use case right now, and that is a very simple use case that we have not talked about today, so I'm not going to elaborate on that one. But I understand your question, Ashok, and I will make sure that we can get you a straight answer. And then I saw Heath. To add to that, questions around GA dashboard is reading its own DB and is only for admin. The great opportunity for BAM dashboard is a way for non-admins to access these the BAM dashboard. That is really, yes, thank you, Heath. That is a very good clarification. And I think we need to remember that, all of us, that these MFTs, they're administrative tools, right? And a very good use case for specifically, I guess, for Go Anywhere as well, is that we don't want, we could create these different roles, and we could potentially invite people into the Go Anywhere without giving them too much freedom, right? But we don't really want to, do we? I wouldn't want to, at least. I know that I could give someone a web user admin access, and they could still do things that could mess things up completely. So giving them the opportunity instead to use the BAM dashboard, where that makes a whole bunch of more sense. Let's see, let me scroll up. I think I might have missed something. Let's see. I mean, if you guys have any questions, just fire away. Yes. All right. I also have, and I guess because there weren't that many questions, and that is fine. Maybe the webinar was just so good that you didn't have to ask anything. But in all seriousness, I know that another question that pops up quite a lot during my demos is that, so we have these different environments, and to highlight, you would be paying per don't get upset with me when I start to talk about sales things, because I'm not a salesperson. But I just want to highlight that you pay by database connections. So you could have 1 billion participants, you could have 1 billion processes, SLAs, etc. We don't care. It is the database connection that is important for us. And I know, I think this is quite funny, but we would allow you, because you still have the freedom. And I'll give you an example. So we're right now connected to two different databases. We could potentially say that we only have one database, but we have 15 archive databases, right? So we could have one for 2024, 2023, 2022, and so on. And it's not like we're supervising this, right? So what I would recommend, and what I usually tell customers asking about this, is that just use your production one for production, and then use the second node second environment if you have paid for it, to change it to these historical information as well, because there's many questions about transfers that could have happened years ago. Honestly, it doesn't happen that often for me, but I've had a few ServiceNow incidents where someone is going to be asking me about, that transfer that happened 1.5 years ago. And it'd be tricky because we haven't stored that information, perhaps. So you can change this one to those historical databases. I wouldn't advise, I know some of our customers, they would buy 2 environment slots, and they would use test as the other one. Unless you want a heart attack from time to time, I guess. If I go to the BAM dashboard and someone has been playing around with the in the test environment, and you're looking in the organization dashboard, and you're going to see a bunch of failures. So spare your heart a little bit and try to separate these. Let me see. Sorry. So Roberto, right. But the database size of the MFT does have an impact on the performance of BAM. Do you have any guidance on best practices on transactions, users, etc., numbers to get an optimal experience? What are you seeing in the field? So I cannot really give you a straight answer here. I understand the question. But the problem right now, it's not really a problem, by the way. Well, I guess it depends on who you, from what perspective. But we cannot really be sure unless we set up a POC, because we all need to understand that every environment is different, right? So if I work at that private bank, they have an infrastructure, they have a network, etc. And then we go to a global enterprise, right? They have offices in India, in the US, even in Australia, I don't know, wherever, right? So I think it's fairly difficult to say performance-wise. But we have customers who run BAM that has, I think they had 300,000 file transfers in a day. I remember that one. And they didn't really see any slowness. Maybe it was just an an overly juiced environment. But we have these indexes that we can supply, which helps BAM sort of navigate faster. But I guess I'm really just rambling, by the way, Roberto. But your question makes sense. I will do a proper write-up and share these questions. And I see that we're not out of time. We still have 2 minutes, but I hope I gave you a little bit of a tease. Right. So thank you, Heath. Thank you. So is there a DB system which works better than others? I know when it comes to myself and my experience, I know that MySQL, for example, and MySQL has been working just fine. The recommendation that we give, Roberto, is to mirror your MFT environment. That means that if you're using MySQL, for example, or MySQL, that also means that you probably have the most knowledge within the company to MySQL. And so it would make sense to keep using that database, even if we might see better performances in another database. I hope that makes sense. So, I mean, right now we support PostgreSQL as well, or SQL. And if you guys are running that, then I recommend you use that for your BAM as well. Now, this has been a joy for me, by the way. I'm very thankful for everyone that joined. And I guess I'll see you guys around. I will get back to any questions that I've missed and we'll send an email out. Thanks again and have a great day, everyone.